to live to the fullest, to live and love, and to give expression to it in paint, one must also be a true believer. Painting refreshes and restores me. It enables me to forget that I am temporarily unable to write. So I paint while the reservoir replenishes itself. Occasionally, I will paint after I have done my stint of writing for the day and knock out a relatively good one, and go on painting for days. Sooner or later, however, the writing drags me back to my desk. Stealing away from the typewriter, I sneak up on them and gaze in amazement. Did I really do that? And that? How?
I only know that I want to paint. That's all I know. But I don't know anything more than that, really, about my work. That's all I know, that I want to have the brush in my hand and paint. But what it is, what happens, I don't know. You know, that's for the world, the rest of the world to decide. To paint. That's all I know. But I don't know anything more than that, really, about my work. That's all I know, that I want to have the brush in my hand and paint. But what it is, what happens, I don't know. You know, that's for the world, the rest of the world to decide, you know. Not me, I feel. In fact, I don't have any reason for doing anything. That's the interesting and strange thing. That's why it's difficult to talk or write about this business. When I sit down, I don't know what I'm about to do. I may sometimes have a very rough idea. Maybe I would like to try to do a landscape. But the landscape may turn into something quite different, do you see, as I go along. And more I found, or I believe I'm right, that the proper way for me, not everybody, but for me, who was not born a painter, had no talent, and is still lacking in a great many things, the best thing for me to do is to follow my instinct. Let the brush in my hand decide what I am doing. Not think. In fact, in general, about creative work, writing the same way, I try not to think, do you see? I try to uncover whatever is inside me that I don't know about. I only have a very vague notion of what I'm going to write, you know, when I start in. So, I mean, there are all kinds of painters. And of course, among the big painters, they're divided into schools. They have definite ideas, ideologies they're following. You know, one is in this track, another in that trend, and so on. But I don't have any such thing. I've got skids under me, as it were, you know? Each time it's an adventure.
I was in search of a friendly face, a handout, in other words. When I find myself before the show window of the department store, suddenly the Turners. Try it, they whispered. Maybe you too can paint. The following day, we managed to get some nourishment, and with the extra coins we had raked in, we bought 2 brushes, the poorest kind, and a box of child's watercolors. It was during this period that my wife, who had been to Paris, returned with a copy of that sensational album of George Gross's Ecce Homo. What a revelation it was. Such unmitigated savagery, sublime desperation, and what magistral, devastating use of the watercolor medium. That night, I sat down to copy the cover of Ecce Homo. To my amazement, I succeeded in obtaining a real likeness. I was dumbfounded. I could draw then. Or at least I could copy what I saw. I had my first exhibition about a year after in my wife's Roman tavern in Greenwich Village. And this, you see, is only 5 years after I began writing seriously. The first and most important thing, it seems to me, was that I had to stop work. That is, give up the idea of ever working for anybody, and make a definite renunciation and decide to be a writer and nothing less. And that's what I did, of course, sometime in 1924 when I quit my job in the Western Union as an employment manager. From then on was misery. 10 years, I think, of writing without anything to show for it. 3 books written before I leave America. 2 novels and a book of essays about the Messenger Boys. And thank God none of them ever saw the light of day. I remarry, and I decided to go to France, or rather, my thought was to go to Spain. I left on the boat with the idea of going to Spain with $10 in my pocket. I reached London, stay a month there, waiting always for money to go ahead. I never saw Spain until, I suppose, 20 years later. And I reach Paris, and another life of misery begins, but on a different level and with a different ambience entirely. Misery compounded with joy. In Paris, I get my first book written, you might say under my own name. But at any rate, I found my voice there in Paris, and I wrote that book, which I guess started all the trouble and the success at the same time. And that was The Tropic of Cancer. And I think I'd like to read just a paragraph from the opening of Tropic of Cancer that might give the spirit of the thing. It is now the fall of my 2nd year in Paris. I was sent here for a reason I have not yet been able to fathom. I have no money, no resources, no hopes. I am the happiest man alive. A year ago, 6 months ago, I thought that I was an artist. I no longer think about it. I am. Everything that was literature has fallen from me. There are no more books to be written, thank God. This is not a book. This is libel, slander, defamation of character. This is not a book in the ordinary sense of the word. No, this is a prolonged insult, a gob of spit in the face of art, a kick in the pants to God, man, destiny, time, love, beauty, what you will. I am going to sing for you. To sing, you must first open your mouth. You must have a pair of lungs and a little knowledge of music. It is not necessary to have an accordion or a guitar. The essential thing is to want to sing. This, then, is a song. I am singing. Well, of course, that wasn't a book to end books. I thought it was the only book I was going to write, but perhaps since then I may have written 20 or 30. June 1933. Dear Emil, it doesn't go so easily, the watercolor business. This one is a sample of what I can turn out. I just must get some first-hand knowledge, a little idea of the craft. Something beside inspiration and enthusiasm. Now and then I knock out a tolerable one. Tolerable, that is, for me to look at. It does not matter a damn if one can draw or not. If one feels intensely, sees intensely, believes intensely, good and only good must follow. I don't think about any single thing, but about all things at once. All the riches crowding into my brain day after day, and only little strings of sausage meat coming forth. The paint runs off my tongue like saliva, like fuchsias, if you like. I want to show the world that not all the great surrealists are dead. As for influences, undoubtedly the Japanese exerted the most profound influence of all. They were the first artists whose work I hung on my walls, and they will probably be the last.
Still today, I still go back and call them my beloved artists and idols. I mean, like Utamaro, Hiroshige, and Hokusai.
The one thing I never learned from them is discipline. I prefer to ease out by saying that I am not a painter. Yet I do paint, and now and then I knock out what might be called a picture.
Paul Klee and John Marin are the two watercolors whom I would like to be able to come somewhere near in my work, but I never do. But if I could say who influenced me, they would surely be.
I suppose it was no accident that, being enamored of the work of Paul Klee, I finally became bosom friends with the painter who could rightfully be called his twin soul, Hans Reichel, whom I got to know soon after my arrival in Paris. If I were limited to knowing only one artist in a lifetime, one who would enable me to discover the purpose and the meaning of art, I would probably say, give me Hans Reichel. Reichel was of the damned, a true poète moderne. I have letters from fans, saying, you went to Paris and you had a good time. They always interpret it as a good time. You might almost say joyous misery. An artist who is non-commercial has about as much chance for survival as a sewer rat. If he remains faithful to his art, he compromises in life by begging and borrowing, by marrying rich, or by doing some stultifying work which will bring him a pittance. I wasn't getting my royalties from Europe because the war cut me off. I really was living at the mercy of my friends. They took me in, kept me. But I made two friends who used to come and buy my watercolors and buy them like that. I like that one, I'll take that one, I'll take that one. And pay me cash. I always love to see them reach in, pull out a fat roll with a rubber band and do this, peel it off, you know? I was getting then $50 and $75 for a watercolor, which was a lot to me. Here I make the best friends in my life. I had two especially good boon companions who are still alive, still writing, and we are still writing one another. That's Lawrence Durrell and Alfred Perlez, whom I call Alf always. And of course, there was a third person, perhaps more important than the two of them in my life, and that was Anais Nin, also a writer, and now rather famous. I have made one watercolor of Anais lying on the couch. She looks Moorish by accident, that she is not lying on the couch, but stuck on it as if the couch were a wall and the vermilion pillows were spots on the wallpaper. And she sticks there by some chemical legerdemain which I take no credit for at all, except my genius. You know Lawrence Durrell, don't you, who he is and his work? You know that he too is painting. He began with watercolors, now he's on oil. That Jim, by the way, I must say, was the first great European artist I ever met. I had met him on my first trip to Paris in 1928. Then I came back in the 30s and I saw him. I used to see him. In fact, he was one of the men who gave me a dinner when I wanted. It was on that list, only he gave it to me at lunchtime. But yes, I admire Zadkin very much as a sculptor. And I always remember Garden, which was like a museum. All his work was out, and he worked out in the garden then a great deal. Gregory Michons, one of the first painters I met in Paris, a man thoroughly dedicated to his work. He goes to work as if he was getting $10,000 for a picture. He's so interested in it as life goes on that he doesn't want to go home. He sleeps there 5 nights of the week, and his wife has to come and visit him. Brassai, world-famous photographer, for me, the eye of Paris. And it was in those early days that I used to go with him at night all over Paris, helping him carry his equipment and so on. And I got to see a great many parts of Paris I might never have seen through him. Everything imaginable and often unimaginable. A melange or stew that never fails to whet the appetite of a poet or a painter. I remember well the transformation which took place in me when first I began to view the world with the eyes of a painter. Objects which I had gazed at all my life now became an unending source of wonder, affection. Now, as I studied the object's physiognomy, its texture, its way of speaking, I entered into its life, its history, its purpose, its association with other objects, all of which only endeared it the more. I would like to leave a record behind me of Paris in ink and in color. And through me, Paris will live again, a little more, a little brighter. To paint is to love again. It's only when we look with eyes of love that we see as the painter sees. Usually he makes us see and feel what ordinarily we ignore or are immune to. Painting is a day-by-day, spontaneous thing. Whatever comes out, comes out.
It's just for me the pleasure of picking up the brush and seeing what happens. And by the way, that's another thing, that word "to happen." That again is a big word for me. Rather than plan and deliberate and execute, is to let things happen. And that I mean even in my own living, you see, as well as in working. And I think this is one of the sad things about life, that everybody is planning ahead, trying to make themselves secure, trying to get ahead, be successful, do this, do that, you see, instead of letting it take over, whatever it is, and let it decide for it, because I think it knows better than you know, or I know, you know. All I was concerned with in things like that is that I'm going to leave this white space, and I've got to make a composition. And it's going to be abstract. And that's my only thought. And I don't care, I don't know why I am doing those figures at all, do you see? It's just to fill in spaces. And when people say to me, "Oh, isn't that this or that? I see this and that." I say, "Well, that's what you see, but I don't have any sight about it." Then don't you see, too, you must realize, I'm trying to tell you, people never believe, I'm such a limited artist that I'll have to use an arrow because I make a thing like that because I can't make anything more wonderful, so you see. This is the main thing, don't you know? Because why? When you do something, and if there's going to be any judgment about it, or criticism, or appreciation even, that's done by the looker, not by the doer. The doer is finished with it the moment he's done it, and he doesn't give a damn anymore about it. So long as it works, nothing matters so long as it works. Same I say about science, do you see? I don't believe, by the way, to me 90% of it is rot, but that 10% of it is practical. It works. It will work. But so does magic work, do you see? It worked equally well. And that's the only important thing, that you can do something with it. Not is it true, is it going to last or anything like that, but does it work now for us in our period, whatever that period may be, you know? And so it is again, I think, in painting, don't you? And I found it true in writing too, naturally.
Watercolor has one beautiful virtue in it. It makes use of the accident. When you hit an accident, it's the making of the watercolor.
Another thing that I like very much, where I'm most successful, is when I made a failure. It's a nice piece of paper that I don't want to be lost. So I take it into the pool and I scrub it all, as much as I can. I wash out, but there's still something left. And then I may turn it around, and then I do something over that. And that background of the failure makes the picture. The only thing you can do is to transmute things. When things go wrong, you know, you have to turn it into the good thing. You have that ability. This is the one thing God gave us, I feel, and this is the great thing about the whole universe, in my opinion, that you can do anything with it. It's capable of any transmutations, whatever, from good to evil, dark to white, and so on, do you know? And man has a little of that in him, you know. And to take what is lost and failed and so on and convert it is a wonderful thing.
In times gone, on finishing watercolor, which had begun as something utterly different from the product in hand, I used to wonder whether such things happen to real artists as well. Is it so very different, this unintentional metamorphosis of a subject, from the more familiar experience of starting out to visit a friend with whom you intend to discuss Bergson or Einstein and winding up in a brothel drunk as a coot? When I got back to America, I had that strange feeling that I ought to see my own country once again and look at it with fresh eyes. I'd been away practically 10 years, and I wanted to see what America looked like and if I could like it, because I had left it with no hope of ever returning. It happened then that my friend Abraham Ratner, the painter, and I, we bought a cheap car and we decided to make the tour of America. And all this is recorded in the book called The Air-Conditioned Nightmare. While on that trip around the country, I had come to California and I liked it. I had good friends here. People who helped me again. I was again down and out. I had returned from Europe with the same amount or less than when I left. I don't think I even had $10 when I returned. So I met two wonderful people, Gilbert and Margaret Nyman, who put me up in their home in Beverly Glen, and I stayed there for about a year and a half. And then, through a sheer accident, I met a man named Varda, another very wonderful person, a painter again, who took me up to Monterey. And from Monterey, I got down the coast and finally saw Big Sur, and I stayed there. I had no bag or baggage. I had intended to stay overnight, and I stayed, I think, 17 years. And so there you are. Now I am here in Big Sur, settled down for what seems like a lifetime. It's in the very early days when I'm beginning to paint, and Emil Snellock is showing me, things, tricks, technique, and so on. And then we would start talking about yellow, say, and then all the kinds of yellow, do you see? Then I'd tell him, well, I'm infatuated with yellow. Then maybe in a week or more, 10 days, it would be some other blue, you see. And then red. You go like that. You love one after the other. But then he also showed me, and then to the grays, and showed me how to make grays, and not take Payne's gray from the tube, but say, mix 2 colors or 3 colors and get infinite varieties. What I used to do is take all the yellows, all the blue. First I take all the yellows and mix them with one blue, then with another blue, all the yellows. So you see, go down through all the blues, then with yellow with all the reds. And and vice versa. You see, well, you get infinite tones. Lilac shots. Lilac would say, in moments of enthusiasm over the juicy colors he was squeezing onto his palette, he would declare that he loved them. He loved them so much he could eat them right out of the tube, and I've seen him do it. It was he who introduced me to cadmium red light. I never liked the cadmium reds, and I still don't, but cadmium red light sends me. I'm crazy about yellow ochre, too. And gamboge, which is another yellow, and Indian yellow. Dangerous colors to play with, I'm told. The reason is that they're too juicy, like they speak too quickly. Crimson alizarin is another dangerous favorite. As for chromium oxide and viridian, those are greens, they leave me cold. Give me rose madder. I love all the matters, by the way. There's all kinds of matters. Rose madder, scarlet lake, or rose Tyrienne. That's from Tyre, the ancient city, Tyrian rose. And I'm in heaven.
Another thing is I don't know how to lay one color against another. I had the, good fortune or misfortune to live with several artists who did know about color, almost like Goethe, let's say, and who were rabid on the subject, how to use color, what goes with what, do you see what I mean? But I never could understand it.
Later on, of course, I realized when I met Barter, who has more knowledge about color than anyone I ever met, then I got the idea that color has to be pure. The hell with tonalities and shadings, you see, and you put one color, lay it against another, and that will create whatever intermediate color you're looking for, their juxtaposition, And then I found that it was a great thing, the love of contrast instead of harmony. See, one tends to look for harmony, but the contrast is so much richer.
By the way, that's another thing I like when I discover, and again, I don't think about it, but it comes to me suddenly, to lay green on green, blue on blue, variety. That's always very fetching, isn't it? But that's it again. You went to an art school, you would be told all those things, you'd know all those things, in advance, that you can do this and that, The joy of discovering it is far better than learning it in a school, don't you know? Sometimes I like to color the paper. Sometimes I put several washes over them. Lately I haven't been because I don't have the time. I used to have time and would work out a beautiful background, on which to work. And this also had a little wet quality when I was on it. And with that, I like what happens when the pen, it gets blurry, like, don't you know, explodes. You see, in color, aside from a very few masters, very few, the only people that manipulate color well are children, in my mind. And there is where to look for color, because it's reckless, it's spontaneous, it's what they feel. And how shall I say, it goes against all the rules, as it were, in a sense, don't you know? But it works, it's successful. And in your old age, you get the courage to do what children did when they knew nothing.
Yes, to paint is to love again, live again, see again. To get up at the crack of dawn in order to take a peek at the watercolors one did the day before is like stealing a look at the beloved while she sleeps. How they glow in the cold light of early dawn. Another hour or two, and they will already have lost some of their gleam and sparkle. Coming on them by surprise this way, they give the impression of having slept all night with their eyes open. Is there any writer who rouses himself at daybreak in order to read the pages of his manuscript? Perish the thought.
Of course, all symbols are wonderful, I think, And in my mind, too, the only language that exists, truly, is a symbolic language. This language that we speak and communicate with is a very limited one, Symbolic language is the permanent, indelible language, I think, of the psyche, the human psyche. But language such as we know today is only to confuse and confound, to render unintelligible. I know that only that there are a few things that recur all the time. Mostly, I would say, the greatest one is the Star of David. And if you ask me why, I don't know. The moon also occurs frequently, a half moon or a crescent moon, I think that is because it's a decorative thing, especially the star. But I never have any reason for using a symbol. You see, what irritates me sometimes from the technical standpoint, here's a head. Well, I haven't done anything new with this head, anything different. Do you know what I mean? It's still one of my heads. Like I have fixations, I can go so far. I don't know how to draw a face in many different ways. And it turns out like that all the time. Sometimes I don't know, geez, I'd like to do a face showing an expression of some kind, but I don't know how to show these expressions. Do you see?
When I start to do a head, it always turns into a self-portrait. Even when it becomes a woman, even when it bears no resemblance to me at all. I know myself, my changing faces, my ineradicable Stone Age expression.
I always have two figures, and then it's sometimes difficult to determine which is male and which is female, And many times when I finish a figure, I ask myself, what was it? Is it a male or a female, I don't seem to care, I'll make what I think is a man's head, and then I'll give it breasts, Because I'm not concerned about that, Somehow then the breasts come in as a good pattern, in the thing. Two sides of one's being, and maybe the painting is more from the unconscious than the writing is. I can see two ways, or many ways often, don't you know? If I have to think about something, and a problem or something, I am not a logical thinker, and my feelings dictate my thinking a great deal, don't you know? Do you know that no man I can think of has fought with chaos as I have? I am full of chaos. Do you know that? People think I'm an orderly man, my house is orderly, my work table is orderly. This is untrue. It's only outwardly. Inside, I'm a raging chaos. I did not input Japanese, right? But if you look at the rest of it, and it's meant to be chaotic and desperate and that sort of thing. And the writing is almost covering up some of it, if you notice.
These are all done because I was in love, deeply in love with a girl, Japanese girl. I stubbed my toe, fractured my toe one day, and this pain and discomfort woke me up every night, almost like an alarm clock, anytime from 2 to 3 in the morning. And then I had difficulty going to sleep. So then I began doing these things, with her in mind. So they're all rather crazy things, but they're interesting because of the writing. Just words popped into my head and I put them down. Style Scorpio. Scorpio was her sign. Another thrill is to see one's work matted and framed. Suddenly the paintings assume another, fuller, richer character. Properly dressed, they are now ready to visit the Queen or any other high dignitary.
People are always saying, oh, you changed your style and this and that. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. How many have you seen of mine, you know? When you think that I've done about 3,000 altogether, and I know what I did, read my mind pretty well, you know, they don't know what they're talking about. Do you know what I mean? My style changes. Sure, I change from day to day, but it isn't radically changed, like a Picasso change. And I hate the idea, you know, I told her always, of talking like a professor about it and a knowing person. Well, what do I know about all this, you know? Sometimes I look at it and I say, did I do this or did somebody else do it? I say often about my writing. I read certain passages in a certain, and I'm impressed, and I say, Henry, did you write this?
But it is funny, though, that if you see 20 paintings by a man packed onto one wall, it doesn't seem to matter if they're good or bad. They make a picture in themselves, do you know? And you see the same hand at work, that's the thing. No matter whether they were good or bad, they look like Henry Miller's, that's the thing.
Now this leads me to remark that every time I try to do, that's supposed to be a mountain there, and water, and maybe this would be the shoreline, see? Every time and there's a sky, everybody says you got three layers, that's three paintings, you know, you didn't pull them together. And I'm always asking my artist friend, what pulls them together? Something has to go up through the whole thing, like as it were, to hold them together. Those sky, mountain, shore, and water, you know. I remember trying to do a city floating in the atmosphere. How to, give this sense of floating, or how to make a watery one, like moire, do you know? And most things I can never seemingly do again, you know. See, if I knew, I would be, how shall I say, I would be capable then of rendering anything I wished, I feel. Hokusai said, you remember, that wonderful thing he said, he was 75 or 65. I quoted it in one of my books in the beginning. That at 65 he was just beginning to learn how, and he's been painting since a young man. At 65 he's just getting a hint of it all, you know. At 75 he may be able to do a little better. And when he's 100, he thinks maybe he'll be able to do anything. Yeah, at 100. And he almost lived to be 100, you know.
To paint is to love again, and to love is to live to the fullest. To live and love, and to give expression to it in paint, one must also be a true believer. In this thing, I'm just playing. I'm just having a good time. And I think this is a very important thing in life, that people learn how to play, and that they make life a game rather than a struggle, you know, for goals.
They want to see something. They're looking. They're trying to give it some expression. they're not satisfied to take it just as it is for what it is and not try and name it and define it and analyze it. You know, I hate analysis. It seems that man must have some definite meaning given to things or he won't be happy. Now, I can do without that meaning as an individual. I don't have to have that. Things can be meaningless to me and still be enjoyable and livable, you know. Man is a basic anguish, by the way, I find. He's an unhappy, restless, disturbed individual. And this desire to find meaning and put order into things and give significance to it is only because he's uncomfortable in the universe in which he finds himself. And this is his great sin, if there is such a word as sin, that he can't just take it as it is, do you see? As it was given to him, and enjoy it. That's why I think it's so important in life for people to taste sorrow, frustration, despair, and everything that's bad. Touch everything that's dark and evil and, suicidal. Because there's got to be polarity. There's got to be the tension, do you see? And the trouble with our world is, especially our Western world, because the East doesn't have this, is that we want to be on one nice, serene level where everything is beautiful, sanitary, convenient, and whatnot. And this is our great sin for which we are going to pay a terrible price. I think it spells our doom. I really do. Because we refuse to acknowledge that which is also a part of life and just as important is the dark and the evil and frustrating and all that. That's also as much important as the sublime and the ridiculous and whatever, you know? You rule out that one aspect of life, you're messed up, I think. Nobody that I know of, hardly anybody that I know of in my experience, my whole experience of life, could I say, can tell me truly that he enjoys life to the hilt. You see? And this, I think, is catastrophic, is terrible. You know? Because if we're not here to enjoy life, what are we here for? Nijinsky, when he was half crazy, wrote that diary, he said, oh, wonderful, crazy thing. He said, God wants us to be happy. That's what he wants. Well, the way I'm talking, it would sound like a very unhappy man in a way, since I'm always ranting here and raving. But actually, I enjoy my life, And of course, now I come back to one other thing, why I love the Chinese and their wisdom. Because the Chinese say that all this thinking and creation is just a game. There is no ultimate significance to it. But it's a high game. It's the best game there is. But it's only a game, you see. And of course, often it is said about the deity the same way, don't you know? That it's a great game that he's playing, the creator, right? If there was one, It's his wonderful game. And it's a beautiful way to look at it, too. Do you know what I mean? Rather than this pious attitude, about making us perfect and enjoying our future that'll be marvelous and all that sort of thing. And love thy neighbor as thyself, But a game, a great game, in which tremendous forces are put at work, against one another, pitted against, where evil and justice and right, they are of the same proportion, and they both play a part. And nobody can figure it out. This is also the thing I like, that none of us will ever be able to figure this game out, do you see? But we can work within this framework that's been given us, to a limited degree, and enjoy it even. I know I did a lot of ranting and raving. Still, I think that all these ulterior things we talked about belong. I think that's very important, somehow. Because after all, damn it, what is an artist or any creative person after all? He should be a person who's curious and aware and concerned with everything in life. And he's only expressing a tiny little bit through his art, you might say, do you know? But, what shall I say? This is like a key that unlocks doors to permit you to dream and think about other things, don't you know, huh? Well, amen, I think, huh?
The first word any man writes when he has found himself, his own rhythm, which is the life rhythm, is yes. Everything he writes thereafter is yes, yes, yes. Yes in 1,000 million ways. No dynamo, no matter how huge, not even a dynamo of 100 million dead souls, can combat one man saying yes.